strongest force on earth at one time, right? Much of the Roman military success came from the centurions, those who were highly trained in warfare. These were the ones who were at the front lines of battle. Centurions carried a two-edged sword, which they could wield very handily. And each centurion was kind of privileged. These were the people who could own land and have slaves. And they were responsible for 100 soldiers under them, thus the name centurion. And these were the tough guys of the Roman military, who fought wars, who kept order, and were rightly feared. They were also primarily pagans because they had to take an oath of being able and wanting to worship the emperor himself. But in the gospel today, we hear about a centurion who is compassionate towards one of his slaves. And the disciples intervened on his behalf before Jesus because he was known to be a good man. They say that this guy even helped us, the Jewish people, build the local synagogue. Jesus himself was not naive about the Roman military. He knew how violent and how cruel it could be. But he did not judge this particular man on that fact. Jesus responded to the centurion's need because he expressed faith in what Jesus could do. The centurion knew that Jesus could heal his slave even at a distance. He says to Jesus, "I'm not worthy to have you under my roof." He acknowledged that Jesus can simply give the word, the command, and the slave would be healed. And Jesus was amazed at this man's faith, and he healed his slave. Now, in some way, the first reading corresponds to this story. In the first reading, St. Paul tells Timothy, Christians are to pray for those in authority. He even says that people of faith should be willing to pray for kings and presumably the emperor and local governors. Think about it, what Paul is saying. The rulers he might be referring to were like Herod, Pontius Pilate, and those others who were known to be evil people. But these were the very ones that Paul said Christians should pray for. His words are probably very surprising since the Romans, as you know and we know, could be very cruel in the way they governed people. And as we know, they were primarily pagans as well. But what these readings tell us is important not to judge people on the basis of what we think we know about them. We don't judge people on the basis of what they do for a living or how others may perceive them. There is good and there is bad in all of us. There are earthly leaders who are good, and there are earthly leaders who are bad. Some use their authority to serve the well-being of their people. Others take advantage of their authority for their own well-being. Either way, as people of faith, we are to pray for their salvation. This is what St. Paul says. This is pleasing to God, who desires the salvation of all. So clearly, I think Jesus practiced this in reaching out to address the needs of this particular centurion. Regardless of what the centurion represented, Christ was concerned for his spiritual well-being. So in the end, God is the giver of all authority, right? He will judge those who are in authority over us. Our job is to pray that people, those in leadership, will exercise their authority in a peaceful, compassionate, and a just way. We are also to pray for those whose job it is to protect us. The centurion reminds me that we have people in the armed forces who are the first ones in line to protect us. In the work they must do, we pray that they will be on the receiving